Good morning. Some of you may have seen the Gulf Pine Catholic article that says I'm being transferred to St. Rose. The bishop has transferred me to St. Rose de Lima Church. And the bishop wants to have more parishes with deacons. And so this past May 31st, he ordained 15 men to the diaconate. And so there's a handful of deacons, including myself, that are being transferred. And I'd like to offer you my appreciation and thanks to all the parishioners and the priests that we've had here through the years. Father Tracy, who was the first invited me to consider the diaconate program. Monsignor McGuff, who was such a great teacher and example. And Father O'Connor, who just loves the liturgy and has a great emphasis for the liturgy. But I want to particularly thank you. I want to thank you for letting me share very special moments in your lives, not only with receiving the Eucharist at Mass, but at baptisms, First Communions, when I was helping the bishop at confirmations, a handful of marriages, maybe a little more than that, but a few marriages, and many funerals. And all the special programs we had, from Father Tracy's Renew program, where we get together in small groups and homes, to the quads we have now. I really appreciate that, and I thank you for letting me share with your families and you special moments like that in your lives. And I want you to know that you will be in my prayers as I move to St. Rose, and I ask you to keep me in your prayers. Now to the readings. Last Sunday we celebrated Trinity Sunday, an incredible mystery, 3 in 1, 1 in 3. And the best way you can describe the mystery without going into heresy is say the Trinity is just love, just a tremendous love that God has for in the Trinity and also for us. And today is kind of an extension of Trinity. It's another way that God expresses love for us, and another great mystery, Corpus Christi, the body of Christ, as Father said, the solemnity of the body and blood of Jesus. And today's readings give us insight into this great mystery of Corpus Christi, the body of Christ. And they help us so that we can see that Corpus Christi is an extension of the love in the Trinity. Corpus Christi shows God's love for us. And by looking at the Old Testament and the New Testament readings we had today, they were foreshadowed. In other words, it was always God's plan to offer us his body and blood. So in that first reading, we're introduced to Melchizedek. And the word means king of righteousness. And he was a king of Salem. And Salem was peace. And it's actually Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is city of peace, Salem was peace. So Melchizedek is the king of Jerusalem. And he's the first person in the Bible to be called a priest. And interestingly, he's both a priest and a king. And usually they just had one or the other, and those people that were priests or those people who were kings were called messiahs. Now, there's a little background that'll help understand this reading a little bit more. So Abram, who's in this reading, who we know as Abraham, the great father of the Jews, right? Abraham had Isaac, Isaac had Jacob, Jacob had the 12 tribes of Israel were his sons, okay? So Abraham moves from Ur, which is in the northern part of the Persian Gulf, to the Israel, which is Canaan, the land of Canaan. And he's 75 years old, and God says, do it. He says, just goes off and does it. And he brings his whole tribe with him, including all his relatives, and his herds with him, because he's a herdsman. And in the land of Canaan, he prospers, and so does his family. And it gets to the point when he's about 80 years old that Lot's herds are about as big as his herds. I mean, they're huge. And so the herdsmen, people that are watching over all these animals, are getting in conflict over grazing areas. And so Abraham and Lot go to a place south of Jerusalem where it's a high place, and they can see the Jordan Valley on the right, and they can see the hills of Israel and the Canaan on the left. And Abraham tells Lot, pick which area you want. And so Lot says, well, I'll take the river valley with my herds, and you can have the hill country. And he said, great. But a couple of years later, the kings in the east of the Jordan, in the area where Lot is, attacked him and took his herds and stuff like that. And Abraham feels obligated to go and rescue his nephew. And so he takes a small band of men to go and do that against the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, and other kings on the eastern side of the Jordan River. And he's successful. He defeats him, and he frees Lot, and he brings him in back and restores him. And Melchizedek sees all this, king of Salem, priest. And so he realizes that what happened was a miracle. You know, there's no way that Abraham should have defeated these kings, but he does. And so Melchizedek realizes that it's the hand of God, that God had intervened. And so Melchizedek offers up a thanksgiving sacrifice for the victory that Abraham had. So it's an unbloodied sacrifice. And the sacrifice is bread and wine. Okay? And so this is a foreshadowing of what Jesus did for us. Just as Melchizedek is celebrating and thanking God for Abraham's victory, at every single Mass, we thank God for Jesus' victory. Just as Abraham rescued Lot from the enemies of Sodom and Gomorrah, Jesus rescues us from our greatest enemy, Satan, okay, the prince of evil, okay, and death. And so my favorite description of that rescue is with Father John Ricardo with the Rescue Mission. And he depicts Jesus as an ambush predator after the devil. Okay. And he's patiently hanging on the cross, waiting for the devil to try and consume him in death. And when the devil does, Jesus destroys death with his resurrection, and he deals the devil a mortal wound that he will never recover from. Okay? And so the unbloodied sacrifice that we offer here every day with bread and wine, we celebrate just like Abraham and Melchizedek were celebrating, thanking God. We thank God through the Eucharistic sacrifice here. Father O'Connor, in the person of Christ, will offer Jesus to God the Father, okay? And thanksgiving for him rescuing us, for him saving us from our mortal enemy, the devil. And there's really interesting things about this. The thanksgiving sacrifice, do you know the word Eucharist? Eucharist means thanksgiving. And so when we offer up Jesus' body and blood on the altar, we're giving thanks to God. That thanksgiving sacrifice, God's body and blood offering up to the Father, Corpus Christi. An incredible mystery, an incredible gift to all of us from God. And now, in our gospel, Jesus is in a deserted place, a desert. No shops, no coffee shops or anything nearby, out in the wilderness. And he's been preaching to this huge crowd all day. And at the end of the day, they're hungry. And the apostles recommend that Jesus just lets them go find some food in villages nearby. And Jesus says, no, feed them yourself. And they said, well, all we have is 5 loaves and a couple of fish. And then Jesus performs this amazing miracle of multiplication. And he multiplies the bread and the fish so that it feeds the 5,000, and then there's lots left over. And it's important to note that Jesus blesses this meal with almost the same words that he uses at the Last Supper to bless the bread and wine as he does the first Eucharistic sacrifice there. And he turns the bread and wine into his body and blood. And that desert scene that Jesus is in should remind us of Moses in the desert when the people were hungry and the Israelites were hungry. And God sent down manna, bread from heaven, to feed them. Okay? And the Eucharist is our true bread from heaven, but it's very similar there. It's one of those foreshadowings of the Eucharist. And then the gospel miracle reminds us, as those people were physically hungry that were being fed by Jesus in the desert, we are spiritually hungry. And the Eucharist feeds our spiritual need. It satisfies that spiritual hunger that we have. And the Eucharist, again, is the true bread from heaven that comes to us from God. And there's more to this mystery of the body of Christ. We are all members of the church. We become members of the church at our baptism with Christ as the head, and we're all functioning parts of the church. And the church is also called the body of Christ, with Jesus as the head, and we're all members of this body of Christ. And the body of Christ is also called Corpus Christi. Interesting. So part of this mystery of Corpus Christi in our church. And so as we celebrate Corpus Christi, we have to remember that Jesus is the true King of righteousness, okay? The eternal high priest who forever is on the right hand of God the Father, interceding for us and our needs, okay? And he makes us part of that body of the Christ. Okay? The very essence, this super special love that's in the Trinity, he shares with us and makes us part of the body of Christ. An incredible gift and an incredible mystery, Corpus Christi.